Hey guys, this is Mitch with Fine Point CGI, and today marks a special day. We're going to start with a basic tutorial series on Godot. So in this video, we're going to go over what is Godot, and we're going to talk about the interface. And later, we're going to get into nodes and animations and particle effects and shaders and scripting and all of that. But first, let's talk about the basics. So let's get started on that. So what is Godot? Well, Godot, this is their website. Godot is a open source game engine that can be used to build games for Linux, Mac, Windows, Android, and iOS. It does true 2D and 3D, and it's a really awesome little engine. Now, why would you want to use this over top of Unity or Unreal? They're much bigger, they're much cooler, they have flashier lights. Well, here's some reasons why. So Godot is small. I downloaded it right here, and it is 63 megabytes. That's not even compiled size. I've seen people compile it down to 12 megs before, and 12 megabytes is tiny compared to Unity, which is the next smallest game engine that's popular. Unity compiles down to almost 100 megs, so it's almost 5 times larger. And when you're building small, simple applications, this is awesome. You can't even build Electron applications that small. So that's one of the major features of Godot. You have a fully featured game engine that compiles down to a tiny executable. The interface tools are extremely powerful. So if you see this a little bit here, that actually is built inside of Godot. So everything that you see in the Godot engine is built with the Godot GUI elements. So it's really fascinating how well they built this little 2D engine it's not really a 2D engine, but the 2D portion of this engine to make everything super easy for the user. It's extremely simple. The interactions with the interface is simple. Everything's contained into 2 panels, and I'll show you guys later in about 4 or 5 minutes. I'll show you guys exactly why it's simple, and I'll go through the interface, and you'll see what I mean. And finally, GDScript right here. It's super easy to learn. You have 4 options with Godot. You have GDScript, you have C#, C++, and visual scripting. Now, I'm going to take you through 3 of those 4 options. I don't think we need to go into C++, but I can show you throughout my career of talking about Godot, you're going to see all 3 of those. You're going to see GDScript, C#, and visual scripting. You're going to learn about all 3 of those. Finally, the best thing about this is that it's truly open source. There's no game engine, well, at least no popular game engine like Unreal and Unity are both not truly open source. You can download the Godot game engine, make modifications, and release it as your own game engine, and they're not going to sue you over it. It also allows you to do fantastic things such as modify the interface to do what you want. There are people that have taken the Godot engine and made material creators or shader editors or things like that just build these really cool, complex interactions within the Godot engine. So let's go ahead, download it, and I'll show you guys what it's all about. So if we scroll up to the top here on their website, which by the way is godotengine.org, don't go to godot.com or anything like that. That's not the correct URL. If you come here and you click on the download button up here or down here, so click, boop, and then you will see, as soon as it wants to load, that there are 2 versions. There's the standard version and the mono version. So mono version has C# support. So we're not talking about .NET support. We're talking about mono support. So it's totally different. Just as a note for those of you who have years of experience with C#. Now, I'm going to download the standard edition because, we're not going to go over GDScript in this specific tutorial series. I think that's a little bit too much, but we'll go through it later and we'll talk about it. So if you click on this, it'll pop her up here for you, and then you can go ahead and save it. Now, I already have it saved, so I'm going to extract it and open it and show you guys what it's about. So So if we come down here, I've already extracted it to a folder here, and there's the Godot executable. Now, the beauty of Godot is this is everything. This is Godot. So if you double click it and you open it up, you can see that there is a project window here. And then there's this templates window. Now, the beauty of Godot is that they have all of these templates that you can just download for free. So if you open this up and you want to learn about how to make a card game, right? There's a framework here that does it for you. You want to make you want to make a third-person shooter? There is a section here that lets you go ahead and make a third-person shooter. You want to make a platformer? It's right here. You click on this, you can actually see like it's a platformer. It lets you shoot, jump, you take coins, kill monsters, things like that. It's a really simple demo, but it does a large sum of the heavy lifting for you to get you started making your idea. Now, we're not going to do any of that. We're going to actually create a brand new game. So we'll come over here and we will create a new project. We'll call it interface tutorial, and we will create the folder. So you'll see it actually creates the folder for you, and we'll say OpenGLES 3.0. Now, when you want to pick one of these two, it depends on what you're targeting. And again, we'll burn that bridge when we get there, but basically just note that OpenGLES 3.0 is newer and some older hardware can't run it. Now, that being said, we're talking about hardware that's, almost 10 years old at this point, but still, it's just something to keep in mind. So now if we create and edit, you will see that it opens up the game engine. Okay, so now that we're in Godot, now I know what you're thinking. This interface kind of looks daunting, right? You're looking at it and you're like, wow, there's a lot going on here. And don't worry. We're going to step through this viewport. This interface. We're going to have a conversation about it. Now I'm going to walk through it, show you guys that it's not really that terrifying. All right. So one thing you need to know is we'll start from left to right, and we will talk about each section and what it does. So if you look over here on the left, there's the file system on the bottom left here. Now, this is your actual computer file system, and this is how you organize your project. This is how you keep track of everything. I always suggest having a folder called like scenes. I like to have a folder called, models. I like to have a folder called textures, and things like that. And I'll go through all of that, obviously, in a later tutorial. Now, if you look up here, in the upper left-hand corner, there is the scene. Now, this section over here, if you just, let's say, click 3D scene, so now we have a 3D scene. This is actually your scene itself. So when you put in assets, they will be populated here. So for instance, if I add a child node, and again, I know that this is beyond your guys' knowledge, but it's okay. I'll show you more on that later, right? You can see here that if I add in stuff, like a raycast, let's say, you see how it just keeps adding it here. So this is all of the stuff that shows up in this scene, in this viewport here. That's what's in here. This is just the inspector, or I guess it's not the inspector because this is the inspector, but I've always been called it the inspector, but it's the hierarchy of your project. So that's what that's for. Now, I'm going to click on the camera here to kind of show you what the right side of the application is, and that is the inspector. So this is all of the properties and all of the functions that an object in your project can do. So you can see here, I clicked on the camera, and you can see that there is various options here. So you could change like the FOV, I could change the near and the far clipping, I can change the horizontal and vertical offset, the environment mapping, the aspect ratio, things like that. I can also translate it. So if I were to move this, you can see it moves it in the digital space. And you'll get used to this, but that's the majority of all of the things that you need to know about these two side panels. If you understand these two side panels, you pretty much understand 80% of Godot. So believe me, that's pretty much it. Now, when it comes to this viewport here, this giant section, we have ways to move around this world. So what you can do is you can click and select things, right? So if I'm just right clicking, you can see my pop-ups here on the left. I'm just right clicking and you can see that I can select different things, right? So if I were to bring in, like, let's say another camera to show you guys. And how do I move this? Well, you can either hit the hotkey W, which will take you into the move tool, or you can click this little button here. And if I click on this and drag it, you will see that it's been moved. So if I click this little thing, it drags it on the X-axis. It actually moves it constrained on that. Same thing if I do it this way, it constrains it on the Y-axis. And if I hit this green arrow, it constrains it on the, it constrains this on the Y-axis and this is on the Z-axis. It always confuses me because I'm a Blender guy, so. Now, if you click the boxes, it constrains it on everything but that axis. So this, you can see that it moves it on everything but the Z-axis. This moves it on everything but the Y-axis. And then this will move it on everything but the X-axis. So it doesn't move this direction, right? Now, I'm just saying that so that I can move this around so I can show you, like, if I turn on the little selection button, or if I hit Q, I can click and select these guys. See, I'm selecting them both, and it allows me to move these guys. And remember, the same thing goes for rotate and scale. So if I click on rotate, I can rotate it. See? So if I click on this one, I can move it this way. If I click on this one, I can rotate it this way. And if I click on this, I can rotate it this way, right? So you can constrain it, or you can just click on it in general and rotate it any way you want. And the same thing goes for move. So if I were to go to move and I were to just click, I can move it exactly how I want as well. So you don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. Now, to rotate, you just click the middle mouse button and then move your mouse. You'll see that you're rotating. Okay. If you hit shift and then middle mouse button, you can pan. And if you scroll in, you zoom in. And if you scroll out, you can zoom out. Okay? So with these interactions, you can move around your scene pretty well. See? Or if you prefer it, and I kind of prefer it most of the time, if you hold the the right mouse button and you move it, you can see that you can move your camera. Then you're using, just like video games, W, A, S, and D to move around. You can actually fly around your scene. If you hit E, you go up, and if you hit Q, you go down. So that a lot of people prefer that, and if you hit shift, you go faster. So you can see here. See? So that's the basics of moving around the viewport. Now, some other things that have to do with the viewport. Now, you'll see me probably doing this more so. It just depends on how I feel for the day, but generally speaking, I try to do rotate, pan, and zoom versus flying around, just because I'm used to doing it that way. Now, up here on this top toolbar, you have your selection, you have your move, you have your rotate, you have your scale. So you can actually scale items. Now, this doesn't show because, like I said, we'll burn that bridge when we get there, but when I start putting meshes and things like that into this project, you'll be able to see more on that. Now this shows this lists all the objects at the position clicked. So if I were to click this and there were like multiple objects, it would list those objects. So if you were to do, if you alt right mouse button, it does the same thing, but basically it's useful when things are over top of each other. So if I were to transform this to 0, 0, 0, 0, right? And I were to angle myself and alt mouse button, you can see that it shows that. So if I were to have this on and you click, it does the same thing. So one of the things you need to know about Godot is learn the hotkeys. It's like every other 3D tool. you need to learn the hotkeys, or else you're not going to have a good time with the application. So this will lock the object if you have it selected. So now if I try to move it, see how it's unlocked, locked. I can't move it. No matter how I click, I can't move it. This is useful if you're creating environment assets and you're happy with where things are at. Then you don't have to move it anymore. And that's the beauty of that. This will explain that later, but basically when you have children objects, you can't select them. So if you have this here and you select this, now I can't click this object. So if you see, it won't let me. I only can select this object. It's very useful. And now with this off, do that. There we go. Now I can select it. So on, I can't. Off, I can. Okay. This one uses local space. So what is local space? Insert graphs up here, Mitch, for later use. But local space is really cool. So if I shut off local space and I rotate this object, let's rotate it like that. And then I turn on local space, you'll see that everything rotates. And it's because it's following its rotation and keeping it at that location. So this is really useful if you're moving an object around and you need to move it locally to itself. So think of it kind of like you have your global space, which are these three axes here, right? And then you have your local space, which is the object's moved space. So they give it to in relation to it versus in relation to everyone else. And then this is snapping. Snapping is useful. You can see if I move. Oh, did I shut off? No, it should move. Let me see. Did I break it? I must have broken it. Oh no, there we go. So you can see it snaps to the grid. See? And there are various snapping options, but like I said, we can burn that bridge later. And then this is game camera override. This is basically overriding your game camera with the viewport camera. And I've never used it, but it exists. And so you can also click this and see a preview of your camera. Now, one of the beauty things about Godot is it's super customizable. And I'm not going to go through all of it. I encourage you guys to mess with it. But if you click here, you can see all of these different things. These different displays, view informations, FPS, shaded, wireframe, overdraw, polygonal, or perspective, non-perspective, stuff like that. And again, I'm not going to go through all of this, but it's really useful. Now, this is your transform menu. It's just, things that you can snap and configure and things like that. And then this is your views. And again, I encourage you to mess with all of these things. You'll learn them as time goes on. I'm not going to force, I'm not going to throw all this at you, I guess. So that's basic interaction with Godot in terms of the viewport. Now, what is this upper top bar, you might be asking, right? Well, this is the 2D game engine portion where you can actually create and put interface assets in. So if I were to do I could put canvas items. You can see I actually can build canvases inside of this. Now, again, we're going to burn this bridge later, so don't worry. Don't freak out that you don't know what any of this is. We will talk about it, so don't worry. But just know that it exists. Sorry about that. I had a phone call. So we were at interface design. And again, I'm going to talk about this later at length so that you guys can see and understand how the interface stuff works. And this is also where the 2D game engine comes in. And again, we'll talk about that in future tutorials and future conversations, but just know that it exists and that it's here. Now, If we come over here, there's a 3D button, which will take you to the 3D world. I've already gone through all of that. And then if you click over here, there's a scripting section. Now, Godot has its own built-in scripting engine, which is fantastic. So if I were to click on here and click a new script, and again, we'll talk about this. We'll talk about this later, but you can create a script and you can see it's very much like Python. And for those of you who don't know anything about Python, don't worry. Like I said, we will cross this bridge when we get there. Okay, but just know that it exists. And this is where you would go ahead and type all of your code, right? All of your stuff to make everything work. And you can see over here, this is your inspector for this. So or your hierarchy or scene, I guess you could say, since this is what this is called. This is used to select your different scripts and to adjust or to select different scripts to see in this view. Down here are all of your methods. So if I were to call a function and I were to call it test like this, and I were to pass that, you will notice that in a second, test will come up here. And that's really useful. So you can just select them. When your project gets really large, you have a whole section here that you can go ahead and just click through your project and you can see all of the functions. And like I said, I'll show you more of that later, but just know that it exists. Now, if we click up here, this is another really powerful thing about Godot is you can add in their asset library stuff. So you could go in here and be like storage manager. You click on this and look, you can just add it to your project. So Godot is very much like Unity and Unreal in the sense that, if you want a first-person controller, you can click this and bam, you have a first-person controller. You download it. It will download, successful, install it. Yup, go ahead. And you will notice that, look, you have let me go here, go to 3D. You have a little player, right? That's how simple this is. That's how simple the asset library operates. It allows you to completely download different types of scripts and different kinds of things that lets you quickly mock up a game or quickly build a game. And again, we're going to go through this and I'm going to show you how to build a first-person controller. Probably not as good as this guy's first-person controller. Let's just be honest here. But we'll go through the basics of making a first-person controller so you can understand the work that goes into it. And then we'll probably end up using this guy's first-person controller. But you can literally look up, like, if I'm going to look at particles, right? Particles, you can see there are particles. If I want to look up material, well, I got nothing for materials. But you can see here's some basic water materials. Here's some material maker, an entire 3D toolkit that's designed to make materials, right? You can click like a basic water material, download it, and you'll see in a second, if I install it like this and give it a minute to install, and this is the power of Godot, is all of this is free. It's not like this costs money, right? That you don't need to worry about paying for any of this, which is fantastic. It's a quick way of building out a project. So you can see, look at this nice little water material that's here, right? And in 5 seconds, you have this water material. Now, if we go over here to the left, there's the play button, the pause button, the stop button, the play scene, and the play custom scene. Now, what are all these buttons? This is play the project. So this plays the project as it's set up. So you can start your project from beginning to end, right? So show your title screen, show your main menu screen, and then go into your game, right? Over here, this plays the current scene. So the scene that you have open. So if I hit play on this, you'll see that it pops up Godot, and then there's your water shader scene, this specific scene. Now you can't move around or anything because there's no there's no controls here, but there's that. And if you come over here, play a custom scene. If you click that, you can see all of the scenes in the project. and you can play those custom scenes. So if I were to pick like this, right? Well, there's nothing in this scene, so it's completely useless. But if you were to pick like, let's say this scene, which is the scene that we're in, you can see the water material and the scene that's there. If you click the play icon, it says that no scene has been selected. Let's select that basic water scene. And now from now on, it doesn't matter what scene I'm a part of. So if I were to go to the player and I were to click this, right? Now I'm playing the player, right? Ooh. I can shoot and I can move around, which I guess you really can't tell because there's not much here. And if I hit escape, oh, I actually don't think that they have it. They didn't put in the escape. So I'll have to Alt F4. But you see, I can play the scene, but if I hit play, when I have the scene open, it plays this other scene because I set it as the default scene, as the startup scene, if that makes sense. Now, up here on the left, you have the ability to create a new scene, a new inherited scene, open a scene, open recent scenes, save it, save as, save all, quick open, blah, 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 blah. Again, just run through these, check it all out, see what you think. Project, this is everything that has to do with your project. So you could do like version controls. You can actually set up a version control system. You can export your project. You can install, well, in this case, install the Android Builder template so to actually build out an Android version of it. And then they have different tools in here as well that you can use. Now, if you click on project settings, this is all of your project settings. We will get here. I will explain it later. Don't worry about it. Debugging, which is for debugging your project. Editor, which is all of your editor settings. Again, don't worry about it. Just learn it with time. It's not like it's something that's the end of the world. We'll get there. And finally, the most important one, which is the help. Help is awesome. You click on online docs, it comes up with online documentation. So you can actually go in here and check out their documentation and learn how the application operates. And that will be pretty much it. I mean, down here you have the output, debugger, audio, and animation panels. And again, we'll talk about that. So don't worry about it. It'll be okay. So guys, that's pretty much the Godot system in a nutshell. I know it's a lot, and I promise it will be easier. In the next tutorial, I'm going to go over creating 3D objects in the project and setting up a small basic scene, and this will all make sense. And I will explain what scenes are, I'll explain what collision is, and I'll explain how to use that basic first person scene in the next video. All right. Thank you very much, guys. And like I said, I'll see you next time.